I remember a time not so long ago when UConn was considered one of the worst programs in all of college football. They had terrible attendance, never won games, no one cared about the team, and it seemed that they were wasting their money even funding it. Whether they were just rumors or not, I remember there being talks of shutting down the program because that is how bad of a spot UConn was in. After a couple of bad coaching hires and them leaving the Big East, UConn football disappeared and shrunk into obscurity, and it looked like nothing could save or change the fate of the program. Except Jim Mora has done that, and in his first season at UConn, the Huskies are currently 6-5, bowl eligible, and have a chance to not only win another game, but secure a winning season and go to a bowl game. In today's video, I want to talk about the impossible rise of UConn football, go through how they got to this point, this season so far, how they've gotten so good, and what I expect for them in the future. But before we get started, we are so close to 100k, so quickly be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like if you want to support today's video, turn on post notifications so you never miss when I upload, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I could do next. Now, let's talk about the impossible rise of UConn football. Going back in time, the UConn football program started in 1896 and went on to play for decades before they eventually moved up to the FCS level. When Skip Holtz became their head coach, he led them to the Atlantic 10 Conference, and then eventually UConn would move on to the FBS. From there, Randy Esdahl would take over as the head coach, leading UConn to some of their better seasons in program history. In 2003, they went 8-4, they won the Motor City Bowl, and then in 2007, the team went 9-4, finished tied for first in the conference, and lost their bowl game to Wake Forest. From there, UConn won 8 straight games for the next 3 years, and ended up winning 2 of their next 3 bowl games. After Esdahl's success there, he took the head coaching job at Maryland, and this is where the downfall of UConn begins. In 2011, Paul Pasqualoni would take over as the head coach, and this was a complete disaster. The team went 5-7 2 straight years before a 3-9 record in 2013. This just so happened to be the first year of the American Conference, and they were off to a tough start. Yes, UConn had a bad 3-year tender under Paul, but they were going to hire a guy who was going to change the game. In 2012, Bob Diaco had an insane year for the Notre Dame Irish, as he was their defensive coordinator and was so good he was named the 2012 winner of the Broyles Award. This is given to the nation's best assistant coach, and from there, he would take the head coaching job at UConn. Unfortunately, probably the best known thing that Diaco did at UConn was coin the term civil conflict, which was his rivalry between UConn and UCF. This was completely ignored by UCF, and for the most part, UConn was completely ignored by college football. In 2014, they went 2-10. In 2016, they went 3-9, but there was one lone bright spot, as the team went 6-7, losing in the St. Petersburg Bowl against Marshall 16-10. This happened in 2015, and while Diaco did get them a bowl game, his 3-9 mark in 2016 got him fired, and they would then move on to the guy who got them started, Randy Esdahl. This is when things got really bad for UConn. In his first year back, the team went 3-9 before a 1-11 record in 2018. During that season, their only win came against Rhode Island, and they got blown out in pretty much every game except against USF and UMass. It was an abysmal 2018 campaign, but many hoped that 2019 would bring new fortunes. That is not at all what would happen. They would barely beat Wagner in week 1 before they'd lose their next 6 games. Their only win the remainder of the year came against UMass, and for the most part, they were blown out every single game all season except against East Carolina and Houston. The 2020 season was awful for UConn as they didn't even play. Because of everything going on in the world, the Huskies football program just did not play, and they also moved to the independent level. This would make things even worse for UConn, and going into 2021, some thought the only game they could win would come against Holy Cross. Unfortunately, the first 3 weeks for UConn were absolutely horrific, as they got shut out by both Fresno State and Purdue, and then lost that home game against Holy Cross. After that, they lose 4 more games to get to an 0-7 start, and then in a battle of the worst teams in college football, they went on the road and lost to UMass. UConn football had now hit an all-time low, as the team was 0-7. Somehow they would bounce back the following week and actually beat Yale, but from there, they went back to their losing ways, losing their last 4 games, and finishing with a 1-11 record. Some were talking about shutting down UConn football, some were saying it was going to be the worst program for years to come, and many wondered if anything could ever change. Well, UConn's AD would not give up on the program, and he decided to fire Coach Randy and get a guy who knew how to win, and he hired Jim Mora. But who is Jim Mora? He was both a head coach for the Atlanta Falcons and Seattle Seahawks in the NFL, and then won a lot of games at UCLA before getting fired before the 2017 season. From there, he became a college ball analyst for ESPN, but would take the job, and he was excited for his future at UConn. He said, quote, "I'm excited to have the opportunity to become the head football coach at the University of Connecticut. UConn possesses a nationally recognized academic and athletics brand, and I'm thrilled to become a member of the community that makes up UConn Nation. This program is loaded with potential, and I look forward to getting to know the student athletes on the team, and I'm eager to get to work. While many saw this as a decent hire, many also thought it would take years to build this program into something decent where they could win games. Except, Mora has done the unthinkable in year one. UConn would get an opportunity to play in week 0 as they would go on the road to play against Utah State. They actually took a lead early on in the game, but star quarterback Taquan Roberson got hurt and they didn't have enough in the tank, and the Aggies won 31-20. In week 2, they would come home and beat Central Connecticut to get the first win of the Mora era. After that, they would host Syracuse, in which they got blown out, and then went on the road and got shut out 59-0 against Michigan. They lost 3 of their first 4 games, but there was noticeable improvement in both the Utah State and Syracuse games, and they'd have an opportunity to play another ranked team in NC State. Unfortunately, they would lose 41-10, and they dropped to a 1-4 record. At this point, it looked like UConn was back to their losing ways, and despite their tough schedule, they were not going to make a bowl game. Except, they have really turned it on since the month of October rolled around. On October 1st, they had a home game against Fresno State, and they won 19-14, which was definitely a much bigger win than Central Connecticut. After that, they went on the road and beat Florida International, and not only won, but blew them out 33-12. The team was now 3-4, and if they could go on the road and beat Ball State, they could get back to 500. Unfortunately, they'd run out of steam and lost 25-21 against the Cardinals. After that, though, UConn would get back on track. They would host Boston College and would end up beating the Eagles 13-3, getting their first win over a Power 5 team in what felt like forever. This was a major win, and not only was it huge for the program, but it was huge for their chances of getting to a bowl game. After that, they would beat UMass at home 27-10, and they now had a 5-5 record. But they would need to somehow split their last 2 games. The odds that they were going to beat Liberty were very slim. At the time, Liberty was 8-1 and had just beaten Arkansas on the road. It looked like the kind of game that UConn could maybe hang around for a half, but then would probably lose. Except, this is not what would happen, as UConn was in this game the entire way and ended up winning 36-33, and the crowd stormed the field because they were now 6-5. Not only did they have a winning record, but they reached the benchmark for bowl eligibility, and this program was trending back to winning ways. Their athletic director begged students and fans to come to the games, because if they were to make a bowl game, those bowl game scouts are looking for fans to fill stadiums, and they want a program with good fan support. Looks like UConn did that, and now they'll have an opportunity to get their 7th win. They're going to play a losing Army team this weekend on the road, and if they win that, they'll get to 7-5. But what has led to UConn's rise? Well, I've come up with 3 reasons. 1. Zion Turner. Coming out of St. Thomas Aquinas High School in Florida, Zion Turner was a good quarterback there. He finished his career at nearly 5,000 yards and 59 passing touchdowns, and despite having some Power 5 offers, chose to go to UConn. He was a number 36 quarterback and the 600th best player in the class of 2022, and his number would be called upon pretty quickly. Taquan Roberson was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, and after spending some time at Penn State, transferred to UConn, but he would get hurt in their very first game, and Turner has since taken over and done his job. He's passed for nearly 1,200 yards with 9 touchdowns and a receiving touchdown. While he doesn't have eye-popping stats, he's winning games, and he's been pretty good for a true freshman. Turner is the first reason. Second is the running back room. You have to give a lot of credit to UConn's offensive line, but the running backs have come out of nowhere and have all done their part to keep this offense going. The first guy was Nathan Carter. Coming out of Rochester, New York, he was a 2-star recruit and the 233rd best running back in the class of 2020. That's pretty dang low, but stars didn't matter to him as he ran for 405 yards and a touchdown in the first 3.5 games. Things were going great for Carter, and he would have likely been one of the top rushing backs in the country, but he separated his shoulder and would have to miss the rest of the season. Since then, 3 other players have really stepped up. The first one is Devontae Houston. He was not ranked much higher coming out of high school, as he was from Roanoke, Alabama, and was actually a 0-star recruit and the 236th best back in the class of 2020. So far, he's ran for a team-high 455 yards and 3 scores since Carter went down. The second guy is Robert Burns. Originally, he was a 2017 blue-chip recruit who went to Miami, but then transferred, and so far has 355 yards and 2 touchdowns this year. The final guy, who is a true freshman who's been tremendous, is Victor Rosa. He was a 3-star recruit from in-state, and he has stepped up in a huge way. He has 449 total yards and 8 touchdowns, becoming one of the best young true freshman running backs in the country. If it were not for the running game, UConn would be nothing this year, and you have to give credit to all 4 of those running backs, as they were all afterthoughts and have now become one of the better young units in the country. Thirdly, it's the culture and Jim Mora. Jim Mora is a coach who's won everywhere he's been, and he's gotten each and every player to buy in. A lot of these players are afterthoughts or under-recruited coming out of high school, and he's got them believing in themselves. He has UConn with a lot of momentum, and these guys are playing with heart. They want to win games, they don't want the football program to shut down, and they believe in themselves, which combining that with a solid quarterback and a good running back room has led them to getting enough wins to, at this point, make a bowl game. But just because UConn has won 6 games, Coach Mora does not feel at all safe about getting invited. To quote, "If we win this game against Army, our bowl prospects dramatically increase. With 7 wins, somebody's going to want us. It's a good story, and we'll travel well with our fans and bring a lot of energy. There won't be a single player or staff member who says, oh man, we got to go to that town or that bowl. Everyone will be fired up, and it doesn't matter what bowl it is. Bringing that energy will be attractive to people, and if we win, I think we'd be in pretty good shape. Just because you win 6 games doesn't mean you'll make a bowl, and with UConn's bad track record and bad attendance in the past, getting to 7 wins would more than likely 100% secure their spot, but 6 wins doesn't mean they're safe. At this point, the Huskies are 6-5 and have a chance to be 7-5, and this miracle season has already done wonders for the fan base. Their athletic director said, quote, "Typically, when the fan base hasn't been to a bowl game in a while and they become eligible, the fan base has the appetite to travel to that bowl game, especially when eligibility comes as a surprise, much like it did this year for UConn." So yeah, UConn has completely changed their narrative. They're having a winning season, and this at times looked impossible. Give credit to Coach Mora, give credit to every player on the staff, and give credit to everyone employed by that university for not giving up, as UConn football has been one of the best stories of the season, and I'm glad I get to cover it today. But what do you guys think? If you're a UConn fan, how did this happen? If you're a fan of another school, what are your general thoughts on UConn? And what player, topic, team, or situation should I cover in my next video? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.